Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Ruach HaKodash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace, love, salutations, and blessings to the house of David, which is the elect. And just came across this article, wanted to touch on it real quick, having to do with the digital B system, that is being implemented worldwide. Behind the scenes, this is something that is consistently being worked on. And while, you have, the major headlines focused on the wars, and the prices of, things of life going up, you have this enterprise by the central banking elite families, all right, the rulers of this world, right? They are pushing this digital prison upon, the whole earth. Okay. And it's no coincidence that you have these various countries all moving toward this direction simultaneously, right? Because when you go into the World Economic Forum, right, and organizations like that, you have these various countries throughout the world that are all, members of it. Okay. And, the rulers are the, business owners or the governmental leaders of these various countries. They go to these, they go to Davos, right? They go to the Bilderberg meetings, and they basically, implement this whole system, right before their, the population's eyes. But majority of people don't, really pay attention to it. So like, let me just do something real quick. Too many pop-ups. Let me do that. All right. So here, and this is coming from biometricupdate.com. It says Jordan makes digital ID mandatory for access to public services. All right. And this just came out today. So the country Jordan has moved, right? The lawmakers have moved to make digital ID mandatory for access to public services. So let's read some of this here. Lawmakers in Jordan have green-lighted amendments to the country's civil status registration legislation, which institutionalizes digital ID and makes it mandatory for access to public services. Amendments to the law were approved by a majority of members of the House of Representatives on April 13th, after deliberations by Parliament's Legal Committee, Jordan News reports. There are three key aspects in the law, and one of them is the formal adoption of digital ID, which will be required for access to a wide variety of services from government and the private sector. The law will take effect once it has been gazetted. Now, as you just heard, right, this is a mandate, right, required for access to services from the government, which would be public, right, to the private sector. So that's basically all aspects of life, right, where you will need, to have identification. Now that identification must be digital. It says digital ID is described in the law as the electronic version of a citizen's national ID card, and it shall be mandatorily recognized by all government structures as well as private sector entities. Its issuance shall be done only through platforms approved by the Ministry of Digital Economy and Entrepreneurship, the law states. So they got a whole, they got a whole platform or a whole governmental sector, called the Ministry of Digital Economy and Entrepreneurship. Another aspect included in the legislation is the introduction of a digital mail address system, which requires all citizens above the age of 18 to declare their physical addresses through which they shall be informed of all administrative issues and correspondence concerning them. So this part goes into the fines if you misplace this digital ID. Let's see. It says, according to the government, the changes to the civil registrations law are part of an ongoing push to strengthen the country's digital transformation. Authorities believed that by formally making digital ID mandatory for public service access, the shift to a fully digital ecosystem will be expedited and bring greater convenience to citizens. And that is, the angle that, all of these countries are trying to go on, right? This whole convenience, right? The digital system, right, or ecosystem will be convenient for the population. While it may appear to be, something that is quicker and easier, the actual implications of it is tied to more control and surveillance and less autonomy that the citizens are going to have, the people are going to have. Okay. It says the digital ID, they say, will also allow citizens to complete digital transactions in a more secure and trusted online environment. Right. And that's not something that people ask for. See, this whole digital system isn't something that the population asked for. Right. They didn't go to the citizens. Right. Which that's what so-called elected officials are supposed to do. They didn't go to the citizens of their various, respective countries and say, hey, do you guys want a digital system? Do you want this digital system to be mandated? No. They went to these Davos, right, these World Economic Forum meetings, and they get their directives from those, that, like I said, that have power in the earth. And then they go back to their countries, which is why you have a lot of these countries have puppet leaders. All right. And a lot of these puppet leaders are subservient to the central banking ruling class. OK, so then they get their directives and then they bring that to their countries. This is why Klaus Schwab said that in one of those, World Economic Forum gatherings, that the people in this room are the shareholders of the world, that they have the power to reimagine the future. OK, and their idea of the future is what? Everything will be on a digital based system where there will be complete transparency. Right. Klaus Schwab said that as well. In this fourth industrial revolution, it will be completely transparent. Right. He also said that it won't only change the way you interact with society, it's going to change you, because this right here, the digital ID platform, or the digital ID platform is just the foundational step to, bringing forth, as it says here, this whole digital ecosystem. If the first thing you got to do is be able to identify everybody digitally. And then once you're able to identify everybody digitally, then now they'll have to interact in this digital system. Right. Now they will be able to buy or sell. OK, it says where were we? It says the digital ID, they say, will also allow citizens to complete digital transaction in a more secure and trusted online environment, while also bringing efficiency to the way the country's public administration runs. Already, Jordans have been accessing public services through the Sanad digital government application, which uses iris biometrics from Iris Guard. As of November last year, officials said 80% of the public services could be accessed through the platform. It says the country is also said to be making progress in its digital transformation drive, especially in the healthcare sector, within the framework of the Jordan People-Centered Digital Government Program for Results, which is financed by the World Bank. Okay, the World Bank is an institution, okay, that is, basically created and controlled by, once again, the central bankers. All right, which we know who the central banking elite family are, right? Them being Amalek. Now, what I also did was I went to, just went to chat. And of course, it's going to do that. So I went to chat and I basically, just asked it a couple questions. But the one thing I wanted to get was, just some highlighted information. It says, Jordan passed a law making digital ID a legal equivalent to a physical ID, mandatory for recognition across both public and private sector. This means banks, telecoms, businesses, and government agencies must accept it. Citizens must also maintain a digital address for official communication. Right? It says this directly links identity to payments. It says before, payment systems equals separate from identity, right? Because if you're using actual physical currency, then that can be something that is anonymous, right? You got a $5 bill in your pocket and you want to buy something, whatever merchant you go to, they don't know who you are, right? They don't know your name. They don't know where you're from. They don't know your age. They don't know where you live. They don't know anything about you. All they know is that some person came into this store and spent $5 on this particular item, and that's it. But it says identity checks is done manually or inconsistently, which that also sometimes happens. But it says after, right now, and this is the Jordan model, which the Jordan model is following the Chinese model, which Klaus Schwab said that the Chinese model is a very attractive model, okay, for the world. So now it says your digital ID becomes the login plus authorization layer for financial activity. So like I said, the digital ID is the foundation, and they're just going to layer, right, financial activity on top of digital identity. It says concretely, you can verify yourself to a bank without a physical ID. You can complete transactions entirely digitally. Government services plus payments are integrated into one app. And this is all just really a layer to the final piece, which would be the charagma. OK, so you have the digital ID. You put everybody into this digital identification platform, and then you layer things on top of it, mainly the financial activity. And then when you layer the financial activity, you can now layer the financial wallet or digital wallet, which would be the micro CHIP. It says this creates a closed loop system, identity, then authentication, transaction, record enforcement. Why governments push this model? Jordan policy isn't random. It follows a global pattern. Okay, a global pattern. He calls it all tied to efficiency, no paperwork, faster onboarding, right? Fully remote transactions, compliance and control, stronger KYC, which is know your customer, and AML, anti-money laundering enforcement, reduce fraud and identity theft, easier tracking of financial activity. Remember, you had Christine Lagarde, which is the president of the ECB, said a few years ago that, with central bank digital currency, what is it called? Being anonymous, right, is going to basically go away. All right. There will be no I can't say that word right now. It's too early in the morning. Right. But basically, you won't be anonymous. Your financial transactions won't be anonymous. It will be able to be tracked. Jordan's own strategy explicitly ties digital identity, digital payments, data systems, and government services. Does this mean digital ID is now required for payment systems? This is where precision matters. In Jordan specifically, for formal and regulated financial activities, yes, effectively. Banks must because banks must use the digital identity for verification. For the system as a whole, it becomes the default gateway. And that's what they're doing. They're making this a default gateway. All right. In Jordan, which, like I said, Jordan is following the Chinese model, which the Chinese model is going to be the model that is adopted worldwide. They are being architected to run through digital ID. All right. Here we go. Bigger implications. This is the real point. Jordan is moving toward a model where you don't just use digital payments. You access the financial system through your identity layer. All right. So the whole financial system will only be accessed through this digital ID. So first, like I said, you onboard everybody to the digital system by mandating a digital identity, right? Digital ID. And then on top of that, you now have this layer of the digital payments. And then, well, they say, well, we don't want physical payments anymore. So let's just make everything digital. Let's give you a digital wallet, which you already have that, right? Like your Apple phone, right? Where you have your Apple wallet. But that is just going to become something that is no longer handheld, but rather in your hand or your body, right? Your forehead or hands. This has two major consequences. There's the word right there. I can't say right now. Let me see something. Speak.
Anonymity.
There we go. Less anonymity. Harder to transact outside identity linked systems. You heard that? It's going to be harder to transact outside identity linked systems, which the B system, right? The MOTB system is all tied to this, right? This is the MOTB system, right? The chip is just the medium of exchange, all right, in this MOTB system. But as it says right there, it will be harder to transact, right? As the scripture says, he causeth all, save that no man may buy or sell, except he have the mark. Every transaction can be tied to a verified person. More centralized control points. Access to payments can be approved, restricted, logged. So it becomes programmable now. Now they can approve something based off of your social credit score, or they can restrict something based off of your social credit score. And that's all, integrated into, it's all going to be tied together. So let me get this here in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 3. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak. And we can clearly see, based off of the signs and the things that are taking place currently and actively in the world, that this is the end. And this is why these things are speaking. And when you go into that word speak, it goes into the word breath, which means to be alive. It's activated. It's animated. So this vision is animated right now. It's alive right now. And it says it shall speak and not lie. So it's alive, and exactly how the vision is written is exactly, what we're seeing taking place. All right. And this is why we are, actively and consistently paying attention to this. It says, though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. And as we see, this is proof that this is not tarrying. All right. While you got the other prophecies that are popping off as well, this is something that is happening, in the background. But it's all because they want a smooth transition into this system. OK, so I'm going to close it out with that. Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect, giving all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakah.